Welcome to Supernatural Tales from Mammal's Front Porch, the podcast where ghost stories aren't just campfire tales, they're family tradition. I'm Heather Perrin, author, lover of haunted history, believer in the unexplained, and your host for this storytelling journey into eerie folklore, fictional frights, and true paranormal encounters from around the United States. Each week, I'll be sharing tales that are a little strange, a little spine-tingling, and maybe, just maybe, true. So grab a mason jar of sweet tea, pull up a chair, and settle in. Because here on Mammal's Front Porch, we believe the veil is just a little thinner when the sun goes down, and the stories, well, they have a way of finding you. If you travel to the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, you'll find a place where history and legend intertwine so tightly that separating one from the other feels almost impossible. Today, Point Pleasant rests quietly on the banks of the Ohio River, a small Appalachian town with friendly locals, a charming main street, and an annual festival that celebrates a creature unlike any other. But in the late 1960s, Point Pleasant was the epicenter of one of America's most famous paranormal stories, the legend of the Mothman. This isn't just a campfire tale or a spooky story locals pass down to scare kids. For a period between 1966 and 1967, over 100 people reported seeing something strange, a massive winged figure with glowing red eyes. The story has become so entrenched in folklore that it's no longer just Point Pleasant's mystery. It's a piece of American paranormal history. But before we talk about the sightings, we need to talk about the place that birthed the legend, the TNT area. During World War II, the U.S. military needed a place to produce and store munitions. Just outside of Point Pleasant, they built an industrial site that became known as the West Virginia Ordnance Works. It was a sprawling network of factories, tunnels, and storage bunkers. Those bunkers, often called igloos by locals, were dome-shaped concrete structures built into the earth, designed to keep explosives contained and hidden. Once the war ended, the site was largely abandoned. Nature crept back in, swallowing roads and fences with weeds, vines, and trees. The concrete igloos, covered in moss and brush, became ghostly reminders of a different era. By the 1960s, the TNT area was a place where teenagers parked their cars, couples looked for privacy, and thrill seekers wandered among the eerie ruins. It was a place already tinged with unease, isolated, overgrown, and full of decaying buildings. If there was ever a stage set for a legend, this was it. On the night of November 15th, 1966, two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallett, were driving near the TNT area. What they saw that night would change Point Pleasant forever. They reported seeing a towering humanoid figure standing in the shadows near the old power plant. It was 6 or 7 feet tall, with massive wings folded against its back, and eyes that glowed a piercing red. As they watched in shock, the creature spread its wings and took to the air. It didn't just fly, it chased their car, keeping up as they sped down the dark country road at more than 100 miles per hour. Terrified, the couples rushed into town and reported the encounter to Mason County Sheriff George Johnson. Their story spread quickly, and because they were considered reliable young people, ordinary, not prone to wild tales, the townsfolk took notice. In the days that followed, more reports began to flood in. People saw the same glowing red eyes peering from the treetops, or a shadowy figure with giant wings flying overhead. The creature was soon given a name, inspired by the comic book character Batman, who was popular at the time. The name was Mothman. One of the most chilling accounts came from a man named Newell Partridge, who lived just outside of town. One evening, his television began to emit strange patterns and static, accompanied by a high-pitched whining noise. Stepping outside to investigate, Partridge claimed he saw two glowing red eyes staring back at him from the darkness. His dog, a German shepherd named Bandit, bolted into the woods after the creature and never returned. Partridge always believed Mothman was responsible for his dog's disappearance. Between late 1966 and the end of 1967, more than 100 sightings were reported. Witnesses constantly described the creature as tall, dark, and humanoid, with wings spanning 10 feet or more, and those burning red eyes that seemed to glow even in the night. Some claimed it could fly without flapping its wings, gliding silently through the air. Others swore they heard humming or screeching sounds as it passed. For the people of Point Pleasant, the sighting sparked a mix of excitement, fear, and curiosity. Some believed the creature was a monster lurking in the woods. Others felt it was a supernatural omen, a harbinger of disaster. And then disaster struck. On December 15th, 1967, just over a year after the first reported sighting, the Silver Bridge collapsed during rush hour traffic. The bridge connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, and that evening it was packed with cars heading home. Without warning, the structure gave way. Dozens of vehicles plunged into the freezing Ohio River. 46 people lost their lives that night, making it one of the deadliest bridge disasters in American history. In the aftermath, residents couldn't ignore the timing. Many began to connect the surge in Mothman sightings to the tragedy. Some swore they had seen the creature perched on the bridge itself in the days leading up to the collapse. And when the bridge fell, the sightings stopped. For believers, the connection was clear. The Mothman had been a warning. Whether it came to save lives or simply foreshadow doom, its presence was linked to tragedy. Of course, not everyone agrees what the creature was or is. Explanations range from the natural to supernatural. Some suggest the witnesses were simply seeing a large bird, such as a sandhill crane or a barred owl, whose eyes glowed red when it caught in headlights. Others argue that the psychological climate of the time, a mixture of Cold War anxiety, the strange atmosphere of the TNT area, and local folklore, helped spark a wave of hysteria. But then there are the more mysterious theories. Some folklorists tie the legend to the long and troubled history of the land itself. Point Pleasant was the site of violent conflicts between settlers and the Shawnee people in the 1700s, including the Battle of Point Pleasant in 1774. Legends speak of curses and restless spirits tied to bloodshed and betrayal. Could the Mothman be an echo of this painful history, a manifestation of sorrow or anger embedded in the land? Others lean towards something even stranger. Around the same time as the Mothman sightings, reports of UFOs and strange lights in the sky began to surface. Witnesses claimed to have been visited by mysterious men in black who warned them not to speak about what they had seen. These overlapping accounts led some to believe that Mothman was not of this earth at all, that it was an alien or an interdimensional being that slipped briefly into our world. What keeps the legend alive is that no single explanation fits perfectly. Each theory, natural, supernatural, extraterrestrial, they have their holes, but the sheer number of consistent sightings is hard to dismiss outright. The TNT area remains central to the story. Even today, locals and visitors alike explore its abandoned bunkers and dense forest, often reporting eerie experiences. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators describe sudden cold spots, disembodied voices, and camera malfunctions. Some visitors claim to feel watched, their nerves on edge as if something unseen is following just out of sight. And yes, some still report glowing red eyes. What began as a year of terror has since transformed into a cultural identity. Point Pleasant now embraces the legend. The town hosts the annual Mothman Festival each September, drawing thousands of visitors. A metallic Mothman statue standing over 12 feet tall looms proudly downtown, attracting tourists year round. But talk to older residents, especially those who lived through the 1960s, and you'll hear a different tone. For them, Mothman isn't just a quirky tourist attraction or a festival mascot. It's a memory of fear, of unanswered questions, and of a tragedy that forever changed their community. At its heart, the story of Mothman is about more than a strange creature. It's about how folklore grows from the soil of real events, how sightings, tragedy, and mystery blend together to form a legend that never fades. Was the Mothman a misidentified bird, a spirit bound to the land, a being from another world? Or was it truly an omen sent to warn of disaster that no one could stop? We may never know the truth. What we do know is that Point Pleasant will never be separated from its most famous shadow. The Mothman is as much a part of the town as the river, the bridge, and the history that shaped it. And even now, decades later, the legend still spreads its wings. And now we're going to head to Arkansas and talk about the Crescent Hotel. If you've ever found yourself in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, tucked away among the rolling hills and winding roads, there's a little town that looks like it came straight out of a storybook. Eureka Springs is a place of charm. Gingerbread-style Victorian homes cling to the hillsides. Narrow streets twist and turn like a maze, and natural springs bubble up with a reputation for healing. But for all of its quaint beauty, Eureka Springs is also home to one of the most haunted hotels in America. In fact, many call it the most haunted hotel in the United States. I'm talking about the Crescent Hotel. The Crescent Hotel rises above Eureka Springs like a castle out of place, perched high on a hill and overlooking the town below. It's big, it's beautiful, and it's got a reputation that most hotels wouldn't want. Though in truth, it's made this hotel more famous than ever. The Crescent Hotel isn't just a hotel. It's a place where history and tragedy intertwine, where a con man once promised miracle cures, and where guests today still report seeing things they can't explain. It's where people check in for a night's rest and sometimes leave with a story they'll never forget. To really understand why this hotel is so haunted, we need to go back to the very beginning. The story of the Crescent starts in the late 1800s, at a time when Eureka Springs was booming. The town had become famous for its natural springs, which were believed to have powerful healing properties. People flocked to the area, hoping to cure everything from rheumatism to tuberculosis. It was a Victorian-era health craze, and the town exploded almost overnight into a bustling resort destination. Sensing an opportunity, the Eureka Springs Improvement Company, backed by the wealthy Frisco Railroad, decided the town needed a grand hotel to draw in even more visitors. In 1886, construction began on the Crescent Hotel. Irish stonemasons were brought in to cut and place the massive pieces of native limestone. The result was a sprawling structure that looked like something you'd expect to see in Europe rather than the Ozarks. With 78 guest rooms, elaborate ballrooms, sweeping verandas, and even electric lights, which were still a novelty at the time. The Crescent was billed as the most luxurious resort hotel in America. It was a showpiece, and at first it was a success. Wealthy travelers from across the country came to stay. The Crescent hosted elaborate parties and was the crown jewel of Eureka Springs. But like so many grand Victorian hotels, its glory days didn't last long. By the turn of the century, the popularity of the springs was fading. People no longer believed the waters could cure them, and Eureka Springs started to lose its sparkle. The Crescent Hotel went from high society to struggling to stay open. By 1908, the hotel had closed its doors as a resort, but the massive building didn't sit empty. In 1908, it was reopened as the Crescent College and Conservatory for Young Women, a boarding school for the daughters of wealthy families. It was the kind of finishing school where young ladies studied music, literature, and the arts. And for a while, it thrived. But the upkeep on such a large building was expensive, and by 1924, the school closed as well. After that, the Crescent seemed doomed to cycle through new identities. It reopened briefly as a junior college, and then in 1937, it was sold to a man named Norman Baker. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn. Norman Baker was a radio personality and entrepreneur from Iowa. He styled himself as a doctor, but he wasn't a doctor at all. What he was a con man. Baker had already gotten into trouble in Iowa for running a hospital that claimed to cure cancer without surgery or radiation. His so-called cure was little more than injections of common ingredients like watermelon seeds and corn silk, combined with food coloring. It was worthless. But Baker was charismatic. He railed against medical conspiracies and claimed the government and doctors were hiding his cure to protect their profits. He preyed on vulnerable people, desperate families looking for hope. When Iowa authorities shut him down, Baker packed up and moved to Eureka Springs. There he bought the Crescent Hotel and reopened it as the Baker Cancer Hospital. He promised miraculous cures and drew patients from across the country. The town, eager for an economic boost, welcomed him. But inside the hospital, things were far from miraculous. The so-called treatments did nothing, and many of the patients suffered terribly. That makes me angry. Some were subjected to painful injections several times a day. Others lingered in agony, denied real medical care. Records suggest that hundreds of people died within those walls under Baker's care. Their families believed they were sending their loved ones to be healed, but instead they were handing them over to a fraud. That really does make me angry, especially as a cancer survivor. The man was evil. The most chilling part, though, many believe that Baker and his staff disposed of the bodies on the grounds of the Crescent Hotel. Bones have been discovered in the years since, lending weight to the rumors. Baker himself lived lavishly at the hotel, dressing in purple suits, driving flashy cars, and hosting parties, all while the patients in his hospital were wasting away. In 1940, the federal government finally caught up with him. About time. Baker was convicted of mail fraud for promoting his fake cancer cure and sent to prison. He only served a few years before being released, but the damage had been done. His name would forever be tied to the suffering at the Crescent. After Baker, the hotel stood as a shadow of its former self. It reopened again as a traditional hotel, but by then its reputation was dark. Over the years, stories began to circulate. Guests and staff started to report strange experiences, unexplained noises, shadows, and figures that vanished when approached. The Crescent's tragic past seemed to linger, echoing in its hallways. And that brings us to the hauntings. The Crescent Hotel has been called America's most haunted hotel, as I mentioned earlier, and for very good reason. Guests and staff have reported a staggering number of paranormal encounters. The most famous spirit is thought to be that of a stonemason who died during the hotel's original construction. Legend says he fell to his death in what would later become Room 218. Guests who stay there often report strange noises, the feeling of being touched, and even full apparitions. The room is now considered the most haunted in the hotel. Another spirit frequently encountered is Theodora, a former patient of Norman Baker's hospital. She is said to appear to guests in room 419, often introducing herself as a cancer patient before vanishing. Housekeepers report that she's especially active when they're cleaning the room. Clothes left neatly folded on the bed might be scattered moments later, or drawers will open and close on their own. Norman Baker is also said to haunt the Crescent. Guests have reported seeing a man in a purple suit, his trademark outfit, wandering the lobby and descending the grand staircase. Some say he lingers in the old morgue area in the basement, where autopsy tables and medical equipment from his hospital days are still on display. That basement, with its tiled walls and dim lighting, is often considered the most unsettling part of the entire hotel. There's also the ghost of a little girl, seen running and giggling in the hallways. Some believe she was the child of one of Baker's patients. Then there's the spirit of a nurse, pushing a gurney down the hallway late at night. Guests have reported hearing the squeak of wheels on the floor, only to find the hallways completely empty. Even animals aren't left out of the Crescent's ghost stories. The hotel once had a resident cat named Morris, who was so beloved by guests and staff that he was given the title of general manager. When Morris passed away, he was buried on the hotel grounds, but many claim he never left. Guests sometimes report feeling a cat jump onto their bed at night, only to find nothing there. Others have heard soft meows in empty rooms. With so many ghost stories, it's no surprise that the Crescent Hotel has become a hotspot for paranormal investigators. The hotel has been featured on Ghost Hunters, where the team captured what they described as one of their most compelling pieces of evidence, a full-bodied apparition on thermal imaging in the basement. Ghost Adventures also filmed an episode there, reporting strange voices, shadows, and overwhelming feelings of dread in certain rooms. And it's not just the professionals. Everyday guests share their experiences too. some leaving glowing reviews about the hotel's beauty, but slip in a line about being woken up at night by someone sitting on the edge of their bed, even though there was nobody there. Others talk about orbs appearing in their photos or lights turning on and off by themselves. What makes the Crescent so unique is the way its history and hauntings are inseparable. The tragedies that happened within its walls, from the stonemason's fall to Baker's cruel hospital, seem to have imprinted themselves on the building. It's as if the hotel itself absorbed all of that energy and continues to play it back for anyone willing to listen. Today, the Crescent Hotel embraces its haunted reputation. Ghost tours are offered nightly, and guests come from all over the world hoping for a brush with the paranormal. Some are skeptics, some are true believers, but almost everyone leaves with the sense that there's something about the Crescent that can't be explained away. Standing in the lobby or walking its long halls, you can feel the layers of history pressing in. It's beautiful, yes, a grand old Victorian hotel with charm to spare. But beneath the surface, there's something darker. The Crescent is a place where luxury, tragedy, and the supernatural all come together. And whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is certain: spend a night there and you'll never forget it. Next week, we'll head to Tennessee to visit the Bell Witch, then travel north to Kentucky to take a tour of the Conrad Caldwell House. Until then, thank you for spending time on the porch with me. If you liked today's episode, be sure to follow the show, leave a review, and tell a friend who loves a good spooky story. You can also find me on Facebook at Supernatural Tales from Mammal's Front Porch for more updates, behind the scenes fun, and the occasional eerie extra. And if you'd like to support the podcast and get access to bonus content, sneak peeks, and more, come visit me over on Patreon. I'd love to have you join me on the front porch. All of these things will be linked in the show notes. This has been Supernatural Tales from Mammal's Front Porch, and I'm your host, Heather. Keep your porch light on. You never know who or what might stop by.